Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Cursed apartment building. Hello, anons. I want to share some stories about my parents' apartment where I lived for nearly half my life, around 19 years. I've shared a few of these stories in Greentext threads before, but I really want to keep them all in one place. And honestly, I just need to get some of them off my chest. I believe the entire apartment building is haunted, or at the very least it attracts all kinds of strange and sinister things. Back in my edgy teen years, I used to call it one of the dark corners of the earth. I never felt at ease there at night, not even inside my own apartment. I spent most of my childhood with an intense fear of the dark, constantly feeling like I was being watched. Whether inside the apartment, in the hallways, or in the elevators, there was always this heavy, oppressive atmosphere. The best way I can describe it is the feeling you get at a funeral, this dark aura hanging over everything, making you feel sad and uneasy. That feeling completely disappeared the day I moved out in early adulthood. I'll start by giving you a brief description of the building, then I'll share everything that happened during my years there in chronological order, as best as I can. English isn't my native language, but I'll do my best. From the outside, the building looks like any regular middle-class apartment complex, PIC-related. I tried researching the history of my neighborhood and the land where the apartment was built, but I couldn't find anything unusual. That being said, the building is quite old, about 51 years, but due to renovations, it doesn't really look its age. The elevator. This happened a few years before I was born. Other strange things had already occurred in the building, but I'll start with this event since it's the first one I have enough details about. My parents told me the story, and some neighbors later filled in more details. A 11-year-old girl is playing hide-and-seek with her 14-year-old brother. They're running up and down between floors, hiding behind doors and corners, just normal dumb kid stuff. Eventually, the girl decides to call the elevator and hide inside. The elevator doors open, but due to an apparent malfunction, the elevator isn't there, just the black void of the open shaft. She steps forward and falls to her death from the 14th floor. Her brother searches for her, unaware of what just happened. Neighbors hear screams, total chaos in the building. Cops are called, and a full investigation begins. A neighbor who lives near the elevator tells the police she heard the girl talking to someone, a person trying to convince her to go inside. She was screaming things like, "I don't want to go in." At first, the cops assumed she just didn't notice the malfunction and stepped in by accident. But after hearing the neighbor's testimony, they suspect foul play. Maybe her brother or someone else pushed her. They check the security cameras. Each floor has two, one monitoring the hallway and another pointed directly at the elevator. Footage shows the girl clearly talking to someone right in front of the open shaft, like there's a person standing there, but no one is visible. Cameras from other floors show her brother walking around 3 floors below at the time of the accident, proving his innocence. With no other leads, the cops rule it an accident. Her parents sue the elevator company, and that's the end of it, at least officially. Some of the more superstitious residents believe a ghost made her do it, since multiple people heard her arguing with someone who wasn't there. The Bible. I'm 9 years old at the time. Parents have this very thick, old, fancy Bible. PIC-related, similar Bible. It's a family heirloom pretty much. Contains many illustrations, Latin texts, leather binding, and weighs a ton. It's left open at a small stand in the living room. My mom would sometimes flip the pages, leaving it open with a different illustration. Parents were once again arguing about stupid shit. I'm trying to ignore them, staying in my room playing with some toys. The fight escalates and they're getting louder. At this point, I can't take this anymore, so I go to the living room to talk to them, which usually makes them stop. "Please stop, don't fight." Mom says something to my dad like, "See, what an awesome father you are. Even a non can't handle you anymore. If you had God in your heart, you would think about your family." Dad decides to be an asshole and says, "Family? God? Haha. Sure, keep saying more BS." As soon as he says BS, The Bible, which was opened at the usual stand, closes itself and literally flies across the room like if someone picked it up and threw it as hard as they could. The Bible falls on the other side of the room, making a very loud noise. It wasn't my dad's doing, since both him and my mother were far away from the Bible stand, around 7 feet or so. Dad just sits on the couch in disbelief. Mom just starts crying, going on a rant about how this was a sign that the lack of God and religion is clearly destroying our family. She's very, very religious, while my dad is an atheist. To this day, I don't know what they saw in each other that made them get married, since they're complete opposites of one another. This was very significant to me, since it's what made me so interested in the paranormal at a very young age. In the early years of the internet, I would spend a lot of my time researching about paranormal stuff in shitty GeoCities sites and crap like that. Shadow people, 15 years old. Late at night, 2 a.m. or so, I'm playing games on my computer. It's getting late, so I turn my computer off. CRT monitor turns off. I'm seeing a reflection of myself in part of my room, but there's something weird. There should be a closet right behind me, but I can't see it for some reason. All I see is black, like if someone covered the closet with black curtains. I look a bit closer at the monitor and realize that there's actually a very tall humanoid black shadow with a hat right behind me. I immediately bolted out of my chair, but I couldn't see any shadows at all. I tried to calm myself down, drink some water, and managed to convince myself I was just tired and seeing things. Go to bed. Had horrible nightmares that night, followed by sleep paralysis for the first time in my life. After this encounter, finding shadow people became something common for me. I would see them 3 or 4 times a month inside the house, on the hallways of the apartment building, on stairwells, etc. They never interacted with me, would only stare at me. I saw the Hat Man only once on my first encounter. All the other times were other shadows with no hat and a foot shorter than the Hat Man. For some reason, I would only see them around the building, never anywhere else. I'm not sure if the first encounter was a trigger which made me be able to see them or whatever. A friend of mine believes that maybe something happened which made me get attuned to their frequency. I won't share all the encounters with them, only the most relevant ones. Yet another death. A middle-aged neighbor, let's call him Mark, was quite successful, was the owner of a local chain of steakhouses. I would see him from time to time but never really interacted with him. Only small talk, such as talking about the weather, or him telling me about his store and for me to go there grab a sandwich with a nice discount. One day we're in the elevator together yet again. He looks like absolute shit, smells a bit too, and I think to myself that he probably had a rough night. He looks at me and says, "Anon, they told me you can see them." What? "Anon, please, will you talk to them? Make them stop. I can't handle the things they're telling me anymore." I'm absolutely confused. I ask them if he wants me to take him back to his apartment. Elevator arrives at the ground floor. "Forget it," he says, then leaves. I'm stunned, wondering WTF is going on. I start thinking that he was talking about the shadow people, but how could that be? I force myself to forget about it, go to school, hang out with friends, etc. When I come back home later, I see police and stuff in front of the building. Apparently, Mark got a bolt cutter, got rid of the chain and padlock on the rooftop access, and jumped to his death. This left me with a sense of guilt that I honestly can't get rid of. To this day, I can't help but think it's my fault, that I somehow made those beings appear, or how I chose to ignore his pleas and just move on with my day. My father and the shadow people. Maybe due to my guilt or being spiritually and emotionally weak due to Mark's death, the shadow people are harassing me a lot. Sleep paralysis becomes a daily thing, feeling very depressed, constantly feeling cold and that I'm being watched. It's almost 1 a.m. I'm getting ready to go to sleep. My mom is sleeping already, while my dad is awake in the living room watching a movie. Suddenly I feel this intense dread, like I'm going to be attacked at any second now. I decided to go to the kitchen, grab something to drink and just try to ignore the feeling. I also remember that my dad is awake. I think to myself that maybe I'll shake this bad feeling off if I just stay with my dad for a bit. As I'm getting some water in the kitchen, I see a shadow person on this small window which leads to the building's floor hallway outside of the apartment. I try to ignore it. Dad complains about how I shouldn't be there, that it's past sleep time, etc. I tell them that I'm really not tired, and he reluctantly allows me to watch the rest of the movie with him. After a few minutes, someone starts to knock at the door, quite slowly. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks again. Dad says it's just stuff happening in the movie, but I grabbed the remote from him, muted the TV, and he clearly heard it. Dad tells me to go check it out. At this moment, I'm 100% not caring if I sound like a wimp or not, saying that I won't do it because this isn't normal. He sighs, calls me a wimp, and moves towards the door. Yes? Who's there? He asks. No answer. Knocks continue. I tell him to leave it alone since my gut tells me this is a bad idea. He ignores me and just opens the door. His face goes from mild annoyance to startled to this weird 1,000-yard stare. I keep calling him, but he can't hear me. It's like he's in some other dimension. Without daring to look to see what's outside, I try to move him aside so I can close the door, but he's stronger than me and I can't do so. Thankfully, he snaps out of it and closes the door. It's time for you to go to sleep, he says. I ask him WTF happened and what did he see, but he just keeps repeating that he doesn't know what I'm talking about and just keeps saying how important it is for me to go to sleep right now. Seeing how he's getting more and more angry, I leave it alone and go to bed. The next morning, I asked him again, WTF happened, but he insisted nothing happened at all, that we were watching a movie. The movie ended and we went to bed. There was no knocking. I ask him to tell me what happened at the end of the movie, since I know that we didn't watch it until the end. He begins to stutter and makes some BS ending up, telling me to get ready for school already. To this day, my father refuses to tell me what he saw or what happened. I'm sure something talked to him because of his reaction, telling me to go to bed immediately, almost begging me to go as fast as I could. Girl with the dog. I'm 18 years old. There's this girl that also lives in the building. Let's call her Anna. She's slightly older than me. We used to go to school together during our early teen years, but she left town to go live with her mom for quite some time and only came back recently. She was this shy, emo girl quickly turning into a big titty goth. I realize how pretty she is, way hotter than any other girl I knew at the time. Maybe it was the hormones doing their magic, maybe it was the years away from each other, but I couldn't believe how pretty she was. Anyway, she had a Yorkshire Terrier and would walk with him twice a day. I decided to use that as an excuse to interact with her. It wasn't hard since we already knew each other and we quickly became good friends again. I find out she's into Wicca and occult stuff, and we spent many days just hanging around talking about the crazy stuff that happens in our building. Doesn't take long for me to be absolutely in love with her. She notices it but refuses to address this directly, but she starts to do small things such as play with my hair, hold my hand during our conversations, etc. I assume she's just shy and taking things slow, so I play along. Then all of a sudden she refused to talk to me or leave her home. I thought she was sick or something, but her dad told me that she was actually extremely depressed and needed to take meds and therapy for a while. I visit her and she looks terrible, but tells me to not worry about her. Before I left, she told me to come closer, and she kissed me. A few days later, I was about to ask her dad for an update on her health when I noticed 3 shadow people surrounding her apartment. I immediately realized where this was going. I used every bit of courage and anger I had, and told the shadow people to fuck off. One of them bolted away, but 2 of them didn't. They got closer and closer, and the feeling of dread coming from them was unbearable, so I left. 2 days later, she ended herself by slicing her arms open with box cutters. I'll never forget that day. The screams, her father going into some sort of rage and refusing to let her go and allow paramedics to get her body out of the apartment. The feeling of losing what I considered to be the love of my life, without ever confessing my feelings for her. My encounter with the shadow people. This intense feeling telling me I could have saved her, but I didn't. I almost offed myself on that day. It was just way too much for me to handle. That's when I realized that this would be exactly what those beings wanted. For some screwed up reason, they couldn't affect me directly, or they were toying with me, wanting to see me suffer. I left that apartment as soon as I could when I was around 23 years old. Working at shitty jobs while going to college and saving every single cent just to buy groceries and stuff was very tough. My parents would help me with a bit of money here and there, but they were quite upset since they couldn't understand why the hell would I want to pay rent when I could be living with them. I would still visit them at least twice a month for quite some time, and whenever I would go there I would take sage with me and attempt to do a purification ritual in each of the building's floors. Some neighbors caught me doing this a few times, and needless to say, it was quite cringe, but I didn't care. As far as I know, nothing major happened there anymore, or at least if they're still happening, my dad isn't telling me. We grew more and more distant after my mom passed away, so we only talk like 4 or so times a year. A kid was caught messing with one of the electrical panels of the building once and almost got electrocuted, but I believe it was just kids being dumb and nothing paranormal.
Phantom apartment building in woods and possibly Bigfoot. Alright boys, first time posting here. Can't Greentext. This happened in Mongolia, Ulaanbaatar, the capital city. It was 2015 and we were 12th graders. We decided to go hiking in the local mountain Khan Bogd Mountain, which is a protected area, but people are permitted to go hiking on a small, designated hiking trail. Pretty popular too. It was our autumn break, so the 3 of us just wanted to hang out and exercise a bit. It was a cloudy, kind of gloomy day, but not too cold and little wind. There's a flat campy site with a couple of sunshades where people can rest and play around near the top. The hike there normally takes around an hour and a half to get there, which is where we decided to go. We brought food to eat and bought some beers, cause why not? Now the shit starts around halfway through the hike where I first saw an apartment building about 5 or 6 stories tall, orange-colored, with its top floor windows reflecting light and all, just a normal building. I could only see the top bit above the tree line. Tall pine trees are predominant here. You see, we have hiked there many times before and since and never came across such a thing. I was surprised and told one of my friends, and sure enough he could see it too and described the exact details of it. The third friend was behind us, so a few minutes had passed and the building went out of sight. To let our friend join us, we waited for a bit, and when he caught up we asked him, "Did you see that building? Strange, isn't it?" He replied, "No. WTF are you guys talking about?" So me and my friend just thought, oh well, maybe he didn't notice it. Alas, we arrive at the campsite about 30 minutes later. There were a bunch of people shouting, playing, and having fun. As said before, this place is popular on weekends. We wanted to get far from all the noise, so we camped far out in pretty thick woods with a little clearing and felled tree so we could sit. We unpacked our stuff and started relaxing and smoking cigs. The pic is the clearing we camped at, one of the pictures I took, but the apartment building never crossed my mind as too strange to rush to the camera. I know, the mind works in weird ways, so continuing on. I decided to take a piss from all the water and coffee I sipped on the way, and of course the guys decided to do the same. We ain't gay, so we turned our backs from each other and spread out a few meters away. The piss circle let us see all around us. I stared at a bunch of trees. Then the third friend who didn't see the building suddenly whispers loudly to Steph. We stopped making noise to hear what's up. Then a bunch of branches cracking and breaking far away, and a loud thud. Still, with my thing hanging out, I didn't turn right away to the direction of that sound. Then my 2 friends start talking. "Holy shit, did you see that?" The other, "Yeah, WTF was that thing?" I quickly finished my business and asked them, "WTF was that?" They said it was a black thing just dropped from a tall tree. Like in an instant, 1, 2, 3. He said the thing had to be bigger than a fully grown horse. Trust me, Mongols know their horses. They further detailed the thing. It was hairy and the thing ran 4-legged into the woods, disappearing almost instantly. We estimated it was about 30 to 40 meters away, but weren't really sure of that since there were a couple of trees blocking full sight picture. I didn't see shit obviously, but did hear the noise. The next 30 minutes, we finished our food and beers, during which we talked, WTF was that, and joked around. Maybe the Almas smelled our cans of fish and grew interested. A little bit of explaining. Almas, in Mongolian, is like the Bigfoot of America, or the Yeti of Tibet. Big, furry, ape-like creature with intelligence and cunning. A lot of tales in traditional folklore. So we decided to go back down, of which there's 2 options. Go straight ahead, climb up some rocks and follow a trail into more woods, or head back. Alright. So, considering what we just experienced, we obviously chose the latter, safer option. While on the hike back, we talked about that thing nonstop, and me and another friend thought it might have something to do with the weird apartment building on the way up here. Finally, after another hour or something, we went down and into the city and headed home. Now, I've hiked there dozens of times since, but never came across something like that again, although a different friend and I saw a pair of deer. I've used Google Earth to eye spy for anything remotely built with concrete, but nothing came up. Also, logically, something like that deep in the woods is impossible. A fucking 6-story apartment building, water pipes, and infrastructure up a mountain. Alright, I'm finishing this off. Good to get this off my chest. Pick related here is the Google Earth crop in paint.
I've been living in my current apartment for about 6 months now, and something is seriously wrong. I don't know if it's haunted, cursed, or what, but I can't take it anymore. I'll try to keep this as coherent as possible, but no Greentext. Here's everything that's happened so far. I moved into this place back in March. It's a small 1-bedroom in an older building downtown. The rent was cheap, which was a red flag in hindsight, but I was desperate. The landlord seemed nice enough, but he was weirdly evasive when I asked why the previous tenant moved out. He just said, "Oh, they had to leave suddenly," and changed the subject. I didn't think much of it at the time. The first week was fine. The apartment was a little drafty, and the pipes made weird noises, but nothing out of the ordinary for an old building. Then, things started getting strange. It was around 2 a.m., and I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep. I heard a faint knocking sound, like someone tapping on the wall. I figured it was just the neighbors, but it kept going, soft, rhythmic, and coming from inside my apartment. I got up to check, but as soon as I stepped into the living room, it stopped. I wrote it off as my imagination and went back to bed. The next night, it happened again. This time it was louder, more insistent. I searched the entire apartment, but there was no one there. I even checked the walls to see if it was some kind of plumbing issue, but the knocking didn't match up with any pipes. It sounded deliberate, like someone was trying to get my attention. A few days later, I saw it for the first time. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I felt this cold chill run down my spine. I turned around and there was a shadow in the hallway. It was tall, way taller than a person, and it didn't move like a normal shadow. It just stood there, flickering slightly, like it was alive. I froze, and after a few seconds, it vanished. I tried to convince myself it was just a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. That was the first time I felt truly unsafe in my own home. The next week, things escalated. I started hearing voices, whispers really. At first, they were so faint I thought I was imagining them, but then they got louder. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but it sounded like multiple people talking at once, all overlapping. The worst part was that it didn't seem to be coming from any one direction. It was like the voices were inside my head. I tried recording it on my phone, but all I got was static. My friends thought I was going crazy, but I wasn't making this up. The whispers and voices sometimes disappeared. I would go weeks without hearing anything, and then they would suddenly come back. This is where it gets really bad. About a month ago, I started experiencing sleep paralysis. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, unable to move, and there would be this thing standing at the foot of my bed. It looked like a person, but its features were all wrong, too long, too sharp, like it was stretched out. Its eyes were just black voids, and it had no other distinct features, no mouth or nose that I could see. The first time it happened, I thought it was just a nightmare. But then it kept happening, almost every night. I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, and the thing would be gone. But I could still feel its presence, like it was watching me from the shadows. Last week, I started hearing footsteps. They'd start in the living room and slowly make their way down the hallway toward my bedroom. I'd lock the door and hide under the covers, but the footsteps would stop right outside. Then, I'd hear this low, guttural breathing, like whatever was out there was waiting for me. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and threw the door open, ready to confront whatever was there. But the hallway was empty. The footsteps stopped, and the apartment was dead silent. I felt like I was losing my mind. I've done everything I can think of to make this stop. I burned sage, hung up crosses, even tried talking to whatever it is, begging it to leave me alone. But nothing works. If anything, it's gotten worse. The whispers are louder now, and I feel like I'm being watched all the time. I can't sleep, I can't eat, and I'm constantly on edge. I'm currently sleeping in one of my friend's apartments. I just couldn't take any more of the paranormal bullshit happening in that place. I decided to just vacate the place and tell the landlord I'm not going back. I just need to get my things out of the apartment and find another place to rent.
Not really a full story, but the old two-family New England apartment my family lived in was turbo-haunted. My older sister and I slept in the same bedroom. At night, while wide awake, I would often hear a woman's voice whispering all around the bed to the point I would be in tears calling for my parents. Naturally, I thought my sister was messing with me, so I would watch to see if it was her, but she was always asleep when this happened. If I tried to ignore it, the voice would sometimes whisper my name directly into my ear. This was so consistent, I had to sleep with headphones on, listening to music every night. My family puts me on the fast track to be baptized despite not being in the church for years, and the voice actually stops after getting baptized. My sister later admitted she was tormented by the voice too, and she thought it was me, but I would be asleep, just like my experience. She just acted tough for me. There was this studio room that was the worst. It had no windows and slanted with the roof on one side and its door open to the kitchen. I would constantly have nightmares about some being in this room. It was always the same. A malevolent entity speaking to us, threatening my family, would leave the apartment, and when I would peek back at floor level from the stairs into the studio, it would be furious, like whatever it was would jump out of this dark room to kill us. We had an old wood carving portrait of our grandparents hung in the studio room. One night there was a loud clattering that made my dog shriek and run from the kitchen under my bed. My parents checked around, but everything seemed normal. All except the wood carving my dad noticed now had streaking black burn marks across it, like something had swung a searing hot iron at it. It wasn't ink. It wasn't something you could do with your hand or any object. It was like somebody took a hot iron and slashed it at my grandparents' wood portrait a few times. Another night, my family was all supposed to go see a movie, but my dad was asleep on the recliner in the studio when we had to leave. We woke him up and he joked, telling us to go see the movie, save some Raisinets for him, tell him how it is, he's too tired, etc. So we leave to the movie and get back a couple hours later. I remember when we opened the front door, the house was completely dark, and Dad hadn't turned any lights on even after probably 3 hours, except we found him awake sitting upright in the studio in nearly complete darkness. I forget what I asked him, but when I went to go give him my leftover candy, something seemed way too off to approach him. I only got a step or two in the studio before stopping. He wasn't listening to what I was saying. His eyes were open, but it was like he was staring through you. Instead, he's just rambling slowly, saying stuff like, "Why did you leave? So this is what you do when I'm not around." So my mom pulls me away and says, "Don't talk to your dad, this isn't normal." She tries to talk to my dad, but he just continues rambling incoherently. The things he's saying don't make sense. My mom has my aunt come over ASAP and they both keep trying to talk to Dad, trying to get him to wake up because it's like he's not even awake. Finally, like half an hour later, my sister and I are trying to listen through our door. My dad's up, my mom and aunt are grilling him. He says he doesn't even remember. It's like he was stuck in a bad dream. He goes to the bathroom to get ready for bed, and my mom and aunt are saying it's like he was possessed. I've never seen him like that before. My aunt stays the night to keep an eye on Dad. Nothing like that has ever happened since.
Ever since I moved into my new apartment about 6 months ago, I kept hearing mysterious clicks. Not quite clicks, more like knocks, but not really either, something in between. The source of the noise was difficult to pinpoint, but it felt like going from under the staircase. But there was nothing around nor under the staircase that could have made any sound whatsoever, let alone something like this. It would appear almost exclusively at night. If it appeared during the day, it was on a rare occasion, never on a sunny day, only on a sad gray day. This was extremely stressful to me because this inexplicable noise appeared exactly when I desired to feel completely safe, considerably adding to my general anxiety, caused by the event of making this my new home on its own, which was a major life event and a commitment. It was the water heater, and it would make more noises when it was actively working, which was when I turned on the central heating, which was when it was cold, which was at night and on shitty sunless days. And it would seem to be coming from under the staircase because my apartment has almost no clutter. Have you ever been in a completely empty room and tried having a conversation there? This weird echo is still present in my apartment to some extent, which messed with my brain's ability to recognize the source of sounds, which I realized once I decided to finally check it out, even if it meant giving up my life, my soul, and my kidney stone. Only when I was on my way to the stairs did I realize when passing by the boiler closet that the source was actually coming from there, so I walked in, and it instantly became obvious that the water heater was making sounds while it was heating water. Another mystery solved. I almost got schizo because of a fucking water heater.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.